What's going on? What's going on, everybody? It is the only sports podcast. I'm Will, and that's where casino should be, but no casino today. He could not record yesterday. He is ghosting me today when I asked what time he would like to record. So if you're listening to this casino, I don't know why you're ghosting me. Let me know. But the topics for today will obviously be different because it's just solo show today. We're going to be talking NFL week 15, and let's just get right to the picks. So Casino won the week, winning 10 games to my 7. My 7, however, the 3 different we had were obviously I picked the Cowboys for the reverse jinx as an Eagles fan. Worked with the reverse jinx, didn't work with me picking my team. We'll obviously get to both of those games in a little bit. Also, Browns Bears, we had different. I really thought Bears would pull it out, but all of a sudden, Joe Flacco is Super Bowl Ravens season Joe Flacco with the Browns. Only in clutch moments. He had an okay game, but the clutch drive at the end to win it was the deal or the nail in the coffin. I stupidly picked Giants over Saints. The Italian stallion Tommy DeVito gets knocked out of the game. I'm not saying if he was in it, they would have won, but that was my justification for picking that one. And then the other different we had, Casino picked Patriots. I picked Chiefs, obviously. There was a lot of buzz for some reason thinking the Chiefs or the Patriots would beat the Chiefs. I don't know why, but that was a big thing going in. I saw a lot of people making that pick, Casino included, and it did not pan out that way. But first, before we get into the games, I thought, again, I wanted to broach this topic with Casino, but we will talk about it without him. At this point in the season, again, going into week 16 in the NFL season, we really just have a bunch of teams that are kind of in the middle. We have we have 2 fraud teams, a potential third fraud team, a team getting a lot of hype that I don't know if I believe in, and then we have what I'm calling the only teams that can win a Super Bowl this season. If any other team, I'm not saying any of these teams couldn't get to it. I'm saying if they get to it, they would lose to whoever they're playing. But I'm saying at the moment, there are only 5 teams with 3 weeks to go in the regular season who can win the Super Bowl, not win playoff games. Because I think, let's start at the bottom. I think official frauds of this season, frauds meaning not as good as their record and not dangerous in the playoffs. In terms of if they get to the playoffs, I think they can win a first round matchup, maybe a second round, and then potentially get annihilated in either the second round or the NFC championship. I spoiled it a little there. The 2 NFC teams I think are legitimate frauds at this point. I got to throw the 2 NFC East teams, Eagles, Cowboys. Now, when the Eagles beat the Bills, I was like, this is the rocket ship this team needed, right? Strap it onto their back, because the Miami game, it was like Philly's just a bad matchup for Miami because Philly's so physical, right? And Miami's very agile. They're very fast, but once you hit them in the mouth, like we've seen them all season, they fold like a stack of cards, right? Or a stack. What's that saying? Something cards. I don't know. But they folded, right? So that game, I was kind of like, oh, I'm glad the Eagles beat the Dolphins, but I also felt like this is how I kind of felt like it would happen. Beginning of the season, going into that game, and even during the game, I was like, Eagles are going to lose to the Bills. The Bills, the Josh Allen, like star quarterbacks just annihilate this team. Patrick Mahomes would have obviously beat them or had a better shot to beat them if he had any semblance of weapon on that team. And maybe we'll talk about the emergence of Rashid Rice in the playoffs or later down the season. But Kelsey looks washed. Travis, not Jason. Kelsey looks washed. So Chiefs, Eagles, that was a weird game. Again, that was like the Eagles Super Bowl, right? The way that the 49ers Eagles were the 49ers Super Bowl. But when we talk about the Eagles, they beat the Cowboys, they split with the Cowboys, which not a shock. I mean, that second game, people are acting like it was a massacre. It didn't really look like that. Like I don't know, when I was watching it, like I called beginning of the season again, we're going to split with the Cowboys. I'm talking about the Eagles, split with the Cowboys. So you're going to win at home. They're going to win at their house. Not shocking. 49ers, I didn't think it'd be a blowout, but I definitely thought they would lose to the 49ers because, again, that's 49ers Super Bowl. They've been bitching about it for 10 months, right? So those two, not shocking. And then they got away with some games where beginning of the year, I was like, they're definitely losing to the Bills. They're definitely beating the Chiefs. And then they're going to have a weird, fluky game in there because every team does, right? I mean, we forget now going into week 16 that the 49ers got absolutely annihilated by the Bengals, right? And the Bengals look like a pretty good team, but the 49ers look like one of the best teams in the past couple years, and they just got completely destroyed by that Bengals team. So when you look at NFL seasons over the course of a season, there's always that one game. Remember last year it was the Colts beating the Chiefs, and everybody was like, how the hell did that happen? That was the Jets-Eagles game, right? For the Cowboys, who's the other NFC team, that was the Cardinals game, where it's like, how the hell did this team lose to that team? Happens once a season, even to the really good teams, and then to the mediocre bad teams happens a lot, where you're just like, what? But so my two fraud teams, Eagles and Cowboys, now for very different reasons, right? For the Cowboys, I think they're frauds because we've seen them in the playoffs over the years, and every issue we as the football collective talking heads, right, in different variations of unsuccessful and uber successful, whoever you want to be above us, everyone. But what is it? Everybody had question marks about the Cowboys when it comes to big games, big moments. Can they win on the road? Can they win in the playoffs? And then we've seen this season, they're dominant at home and then they get boat raced. That's a phrase I've been using a lot. I don't know. I just like it. It's fun to say. They've been getting boat raced on the road, right? So we saw that that Eagles Cowboys game in Philly was closer than I think it was close, but it wasn't as close as it looked like. And then that final drive, they literally got gifted 80 yards of penalties, were first and goal and couldn't punch it in. And that was a loss, but it wasn't a bad loss. Then you look at this Bills game. I mean, the Bills game, literally, they just did I'm a Madden guy, so they just did halfback dive up the middle 40 times in that game, and the Cowboys knew they were going to run it at them, could not stop them, and then it was just rinse and repeat the entire game, right? So that's not happening to the Cowboys at home. That shit only happens on the road. They get annihilated by the 49ers on the road. They get annihilated by the Bills. I think everyone's expecting them to have a bounce back against Miami, but if Tyreek Hill's back for this game, and then it's Waddle and, you know, one of the best running teams in the league is the Miami Dolphins with Mike McDaniels in terms of creative play calling. I don't know. I don't think this is a good matchup for Dallas, but it might be a Philly situation where none of that matters because the Cowboys just bully them with size and aggressiveness, right? So we'll see in that game. But even as a Cowboys hater, I don't know. The matchup to me is really weird because, again, Miami is AFC Dallas. Dallas is NFC Dolphins. So two teams that kind of never live up to expectations when they're supposed to, fighting each other. I think it really comes down to if this was Cowboys at home, they're winning by 3 touchdowns. Dallas on the road, now there's the potential where they're losing by 3 touchdowns. And I don't think there's another team in the league you can have that big of a disparity in terms of home or away or just one factor, right? Like even in games where it's like, oh, speaking of the Bills, like Josh Allen will be bad 1 or 2 games a season where he'll just do really bad interceptions, right? But it's not like one game he throws 10 touchdowns, the next game he throws 10 interceptions. It's like one game sprinkled here or there, right? With the Cowboys, it's literally like split down the middle, great, phenomenal juggernaut, mediocre team that underplays to their talent, right? And it's not like this happens once a year, because I've said there's games every year where it's, or there's teams every year that lose a game where you're like, how the fuck did that team lose that game? But the Cowboys, it's half the games they play are on the road, and those road games, I mean, they've had wins on the road, but they're not good wins in terms of like what they do compared to at home. I mean, obviously a win is a win, but good wins in terms of like playing up to what they do when they're at home. So then you have, so we start with the two frauds. I think it's NFC East. Talked about the Cowboys, talked about the Eagles. The Eagles are my team, so it's painful to say this, but on Monday night, they lose by 3 points to a team that they were completely dominating the entire game. They had what? I'll pull it up now. They had over, I believe, 175 yards on the ground, right? So they had, yeah, Jalen rushed for 2 touchdowns, both of them obviously the tush push, 82 yards. Swift had 74. Gainwell had 21, all just rushing. They were all averaging almost 5 yards a carry. So, of course, when you have to win the game at the end, Jalen Hurts just does 2 bomb passes. And again, I've seen shit where it's just like, oh, that game sealing interception, he didn't get his foot down and, you know, like they got robbed. It's just like he had, I believe it was Gainwell for a check down. They still had 2 timeouts. He had him for a check down that would have easily netted minimum 10 yards. Maximum, it looked like he could have ran for 20. So you get that, you take a timeout, and then all of a sudden you're on the 25-yard line with a timeout and you have 3 shots at the end zone. Like, I don't know why. And again, everybody hates, or everybody likes to show their hatred for the Eagles when they lose. And in this one, it's warranted, but not in the way I've been reading about it, which is just like, oh, you know, Nick Bosa, he said 3 weeks ago they had the blueprint to stop Jalen Hurts, you know, like just like keep him in the pocket and let him pass. And then it's just like, yeah, but when his wide receivers are double covered and nobody's getting separation and you're literally standing there for 5 seconds and there's nobody open because the play calling and the schemes are so elementary that the 49ers running back in the Peyton Eli Manning cast 3 weeks after you play the Eagles on his couch can immediately call out what play you're going to run. Like, that shows not only that your offense is basic and predictable, but that it's not helping your quarterback at all. Again, I've never seen a team, especially a 10-3 team, so a good team, that sets up plays to the point where none of their wide receivers ever get separation. Like, how in a league in 2023, when you see what the Chiefs do, when you see what the Dolphins do, when you see what the 49ers do, where it's every offensive play, somebody's moving, somebody's getting a running start, somebody's shifting the defense, somebody's giving you the blueprint, if we're going to use that word, of like, oh, this defense is zone, this defense is man. And then it's like giving your wide receivers some help to get open so your quarterback doesn't have to try to play hero ball. And again, Jalen Hurts has been guilty this year of not being the quarterback he was last year, but it's not like this. People are acting like he should be benched, or, you know, I saw a meme where it's like, oh, he's from NFL memes where it's like, oh, Jamarcus Russell when Jalen Hurts doesn't have the tush push. And it's just like, he played good in the 49ers and Cowboys games. He just didn't play well enough to win. Those two games, it was much more on the defense, just again, using my favorite word, just getting boat raced, right? And the offense was vanilla, predictable, and kind of just like Jalen Hurts had to play hero ball because there's no other options to do explosive plays, right? We had a month and a half, 2-month period where AJ Brown was just lighting the league up, doing things we've never seen from a wide receiver in terms of like that kind of volume over those kind of weeks. All of a sudden, he's just disappeared. Now he's gone. And I really do think it's because, and again, I'm not the first person to say this, I won't be the last. The play calling offensively is so just basic. And people just say, like, oh, it's the coach's suggestion on Madden. Like, that's not true either, because coach's suggestion on Madden gives you 3 different plays every offensive play, right? The Eagles offense is the same 6 plays over and over again. I mean, I've said it on here. It's tight end screen, it's quarterback draw, it's running back up the middle. It's not even like, again, you have 2 of the best wide receivers in the league. Why are you not doing slant plays to them where all you have to do is do a 3-step drop, throw it to your guy and let him do something, right? We never see that. It's like the Hail Marys on Monday night in the Seattle game. It was like, why the 3 players on the Eagles offense and defense who should never see the field are Kenneth Gainwell, because I just think with the other options at running back or even pass catching, I mean, I'll take a Boston Scott or a put Rashad Penny in the game over Gainwell any day. I don't know. Again, nobody can explain to anybody why Rashad Penny has not seen the field all season, but put every other running back but Gainwell out there because he fumbles, he doesn't see the field, he makes dumb plays, like whatever. The other one is Quez Watkins, who every time a deep ball is thrown to him, he approaches it in the worst possible way, which is now, again, that Hail Mary was 100% pass interference on Seattle. Like, I don't know why it wasn't called. Well, I do, because the refs are shit. But again, we can say I'm done bitching about the refs because at this point it's just redundant, because you can say it every game, every penalty. It's like, I don't know what a penalty is, honestly, because the definition of it changes 5 times per game. So for the Eagles not to get that pass interference that led to an interception, there was 5 other plays that the Eagles got a penalty on that benefited Seattle that I was like, what fucking penalty are we talking about? Or vice versa, right? Where it benefited the Eagles and it was like, what fucking penalty? But again, every game, so I don't care. The deep bomb to Quez Watkins. Quez handles it the worst way possible. And then at that point, when you know you're getting the ball, you turn into a defender and try to knock the ball out, right? Football 101. Doesn't even attempt to disrupt the catch. Is kind of just like looking at it as it perfectly falls into the guy who's dragging his down arms, whatever. But the third and final player is James Bradbury. Like, I mean, I will defend him with my last dying breath in the Super Bowl on that last play, a play I don't think it should have been called, whatever. You can listen to 50 other times on this podcast where I bitch about that. But when you're Matt Patricia, when you're any defensive coordinator, the only way you lose that game is to get beat over by the top. So why are you doing a cover 1 deep safety on the other side of the field that your one cornerback, who's the only cornerback on the Eagles defense who's been getting cooked all game? Why are you putting the safety on the other side of the field to not give that guy help over the top? And then James Bradbury should be benched, or only a zone cornerback and maybe the 6th quarterback or cornerback when it comes to man coverage in this defensive scheme. For this answer alone, he said in a post-game interview, oh, well, I was too aggressive on the flat. So why are you trying to be aggressive on the flat when the only way you lose that game is if you get beat over the top? who gives a flying fuck if the wide receiver catches a check down pass that goes for 10 yards and then he goes out of bounds? I'd rather it be 40 yards from the end zone and you're playing against Drew Lock than it be, I don't know, you give one-on-one coverage to the cornerback who's been getting cooked all game, and then the only way to be beat is if that guy gets ran past. And that's exactly what happened. Like, again, that's just football IQ just being non-existent. Why are you the cornerback playing the flat where the only way to lose that game is to get beat over the top? And then why, as a defensive coordinator, and I don't care if it's Matt Patricia, I don't care if it's Sean Desai. Everybody gave a bunch of shit for this move after our last episode where we didn't get to talk about this, but Matt Patricia is now the defensive coordinator for the Eagles instead of Sean Desai. I'm fine with this move. I don't get why more teams don't do this. The Eagles have had the number one worst defense for 2-3 months now. So making a change in season and getting it right in before you play the Giants twice and the Cardinals, 3 of the worst teams you'll play all like season. The only way to potentially salvage this season is to destroy the Giants, Cardinals, and Giants again. Build up confidence, get your defensive scheme in there, like show some semblance of a pass rush, get James Bradbury off the field. The 2 rookie cornerbacks we had in there looked pretty damn good. So pair those 2 guys with a returning Slay and a returning Avonte Maddox, and all of a sudden your linebackers had a great game. D-line, again, needs to step up, but it's not like they're awful. You're still one of the best rush defenses in the league, so you shore up the back. You have Sidney Brown, who I think is a emerging, I don't want to say star all-pro, but an emerging pretty damn good safety. You got Blankenship, who I don't like in coverage, but he seems to have a pretty good football IQ when it comes to playing that position. Put those 2 safeties, you have a back end of pretty damn good corners at that point from what we've seen. Get James Bradbury off the field, get Gainwell off the field, and what is it? I don't know, throw 10 different offensive plays where you're just doing crazy shit. Bring back the Chiefs merry-go-round play. I don't know, just literally do something but tight end screens, quarterback draws, and halfback dives up the middle, right? Like do something, and then deep balls into double coverage. Like that game to me is not, I'll defend Jalen Hurts when he has good games. Those were 2 of the worst decisions I've seen him make maybe in his NFL career. Because again, AJ Brown was not open. That was a terrible deep pass. You need a field goal to go into OT. Again, if they go into OT, do they win? I don't know. But they have a definite better shot than a deep ball in double coverage, right? When you have 2 timeouts, you don't need to do that. And then the other one is Quez Watkins. Put Julio Jones out there. Put the guy whose long name I can't fucking pronounce. Put him as your 3rd wide receiver, or do 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, right? And just, if you have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, and then Dallas Goedert, and coming out of the backfield, DeAndre Swift, and then a second tight end, like I like that more than Quez Watkins deep on one-on-one plays he never makes. He had that back-breaking drop in the Super Bowl that could have potentially won them the Super Bowl, and then he's still on this team making the same dumb mistakes. So this Eagles team, addition by subtraction, is taking off those 3 guys. Maybe even give Gainwell, I'll give him up maybe 1 or 2 more chances, especially against, Giants, Cardinals, or Giants. But if he does bad in the rest of the regular season, like, put all these guys on the bench, make them emergency, like you're starting if, again, we're injured at corner again, or we don't have, or the other offensive players get tired, and then you can come out and block. I don't know. But we spent way too much time on the Eagles, but again, they're my team. I'm passionate. Now it's time to hit the panic button. I said they lose to Seattle. It's panic button time. It's panic button time. as an Eagles fan, as an Eagles, to see if they do anything in the playoffs, they need to blow out at least 2 of the next 3 games, right? Especially with Dallas having a tough schedule coming up. We just saw them get annihilated by Buffalo. Potentially, same thing happens in Miami. So you have the keys to a home playoff game, but if the playoffs started right now and Eagles are at home, let's say they do finish with the number 2 seed and they have the Rams coming into their place, I have no confidence whatsoever that the Eagles could win that game. And if Dallas has to go to Tampa Bay and win a game with the way that offense and defense have been playing, like, why would anyone, and especially with how Dallas has been playing on the road, why would anyone pick the Eagles or Cowboys in those 2 situations? The Rams look a million times better than the Eagles right now. The Buccaneers look a million times better when they're at home compared to the Cowboys on the road. So why would you trust either of those 2? The third potential fraud team I have is the Bills. I don't know. I don't know why all of a sudden everybody is just jumping on this Bills bandwagon as if we haven't seen this entire season where they've just been underperforming, underwhelming, and just losing games they shouldn't. Originally, I had the Bills as one of the 5 teams I could trust, but I was like, why am I giving them so much credit? Again, we saw them destroy a team on the road that always gets destroyed on the road. And then we saw them run all over Dallas, but we've seen a bunch of teams, especially on the road, run all over Dallas, right? That's the blueprint to beat Dallas, is just run directly at Micah Parsons, right? And Josh Allen had less than 100 yards passing in that game, and they won that game again, by 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns? Like, that's the key to beating the Cowboys. But for the Bills, I don't know how sustainable this is because, again, they've been looking for a running game Josh Allen's entire Bills career. And we're just going to all just be like, they found it because they rushed well against a team that's bad against the run on a road at home against a team that's bad on the road. I don't know why all of a sudden everybody's just buying endless amounts of Bills stock. I don't want to say they're frauds because, again, they're like 7-6, right? They potentially won't even make the playoffs. So I don't know how we can put them as one of the teams that can win the Super Bowl if that's the exercise we're doing right now. So the Eagles and Cowboys frauds, potential for both with the final 3 games of the season to shed that. But at this moment, going into week 15, I mean, just both of them losing games, they absolutely, maybe Cowboys, it's not like they couldn't or shouldn't have lost that game, but I don't think they could or should lose games like that in December, right? Like, you never want to see that. The Eagles, 49ers, I'll give them a pass. Cowboys, I'll give them a pass. This Seahawks game, absolutely no pass whatsoever. You don't lose that game with everything at stake. Basically, your season on the line. You don't lose that game in that way. So both those are frauds. Bills, fringe, not fraud, but fringe, underwhelming. I don't know why all of a sudden we're buying stock, but hey, we've seen teams get hot at the end of the season and then ride the wave to a Super Bowl. So maybe we'll change that in 3 weeks, but we'll see. Now, the 5 teams I do think can win the Super Bowl right now. I switched the Bills out for the Chiefs. And now I don't like the Chiefs offense at all. I think Travis Kelce, again, is washed. I think Rashid Rice is coming on as a viable target, but is he a number 1 wide receiver that's going to win you games in the playoffs against teams like the Ravens or teams like the Dolphins? Or is he going to be the one that wins those games? No, everybody knows that. It's going to have to be Mahomes, right? And we've seen when you put all your eggs in the Mahomes basket and he doesn't have viable options at wide receiver, we've seen them lose countless games this year. Kadarius Toney had a brutal drop that led to an interception in this Chiefs-Patriots game. So again, the same issues that have plagued them all season still plague them, and they're squeaking by with wins where even last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they would have destroyed this Patriots team. They would have been doing their little ring around the rosy play in the fourth quarter just because they're up by 4 touchdowns and they don't know what else to do. Now, against again, they haven't really had that many impressive wins this season. They've had a couple good wins, but impressive. Again, I just don't see it with this Chiefs team. I don't see how this Chiefs team gets to the Super Bowl with the way they're playing. Their defense obviously looks great, but their offense, I mean, you score 20 points on this Chiefs team, you're probably going to win. And we've never said that in the past, especially in the Reed Mahomes era. But as I've said a million times, I think Eric Bieniemy being gone is the difference between them having the same wide receiver group this year and last year, where last year it was all scheming. And obviously, as an Eagles fan or as a fan of the NFL this season, we've seen how important coaching, scheming on offense and defense is, right? Where when you don't have a good scheme, you don't have great plays or an unpredictable, crazy offense to get guys open, then you end up with what the Chiefs and Eagles have been, which is lackluster offenses that last year were lights out, right? Because one lost Shane Steichen, one lost Eric Bieniemy, two of the top 5 best offensive play designers, offensive minds in the league. And yeah, I just think that would be my only concern with the Chiefs. But again, it's the Chiefs. We've seen how great they are in the playoffs, so you can't count them out. They're one of the 5. Next up, I'm kind of trying to do this in order. I have the Lions. Now, I only have the Lions above the Chiefs because I saw the Lions beat the Chiefs, right? And again, we can say without all their offensive and defensive stars, right, where they didn't have Chris Jones, they didn't have Travis Kelce. We've seen Chiefs games where they have Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, and they've still lost these exact type of games. So just being like, those two guys coming into that game, they immediately win. Like, no, they don't. We've seen them lose games where those guys have both been in, both had good to great games, and they've still lost. So again, I like Jared Goff just threw 5 touchdowns, had maybe the best game of his career. I really like the Lions rushing attack. Their defense is hard hitting. Their defense is legit. I like the mentality of this team. But again, when it comes to Detroit, they've never had playoff success, right? Their entire history of their franchise. So for all of a sudden to be like, they're going to go in, win 3 games in a row, and then win the Super Bowl. Like, yeah, that's a tough order to ask, but we've seen it in the past with, I mean, the Eagles. They never had any playoff success in the past either. I mean, they've been further than the Lions, but only 2 or 3 years. Like, it's not like this crazy resume. So anything can happen. I like the Lions. Next up, I would say the Dolphins. I think this past weekend, even though it was against the Jets, I think winning that game in a blowout fashion without Tyreek Hill was actually kind of like a sigh of relief to Dolphins fans, right? Where it's just like, oh, our entire offense does not run through Tyreek Hill. Tua is not only a good quarterback when Tyreek Hill's in the game. It's just Tua's a great quarterback. Tyreek Hill is a great wide receiver. And when they play together, they're great together. But when they play without each other, they still can win games, right? Well, I don't know if the Dolphins can win games without Tua at quarterback, but you get what I'm saying. They enhance each other when they're together. And when uh Tyreek Hill doesn't feel like he has to carry the team on his back, right? So he not being in the lineup was still a blowout. Jalen Waddle had a great game against that Jets team that still has a formidable defense, right? And especially with Sauce Gardner on him to still have that great of a game. Like, that's, again, Dolphins defense is great. Their offense, when it's clicking, I don't think there's an offense in the league better. Maybe only the 49ers, but it's close, right? Those two. So, yeah. Number 3, I had the Dolphins. Number 2, I have the Ravens. Now, the Ravens, what they did to Jacksonville, again, I think Jacksonville, I didn't even put them in the fraud category because they've been a fraud all season, right? I've said that from day one. Trevor Lawrence looks like he's regressed. I saw a stat where he has as good a start to his career as Daniel Jones, and yet everybody, again, it's the Herbert thing where, excuse me, It's the Herbert thing where every good thing he does is praised. Every bad thing he does is an excuse made because something else happened, right? Where Purdy hurts, Daniel Jones even never gets that kind of leeway. But for some reason, with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert and a couple other guys, anytime they play bad or have just bad stats or bad records or anything like that, every excuse in the book is given as to why that happened. And it's never, the blame is never put on them. Trevor Lawrence, me and Casino both thought he would be MVP of the league. And he's had maybe his worst season definitely since his rookie year. Like, he's had just a bad season. Something looks off with the Jags. I think they're one and done in the playoffs. I don't like anything I've seen from the Jags. When it comes to the Ravens, my only concern would be they have a lot of guys who are injured on that team. And it seems like every game they just lost a running back for the season. And it just seems like every game they play, they just get a devastating injury to either one of their stars or one of their depth guys. So I really do think the Ravens are the favorite and should be the favorite in the AFC right now, but they still have 3 weeks to survive, and their next 3 games are no gimme. Obviously, they have this Monday night coming against the 49ers, which many, myself included, think is just going to be a preview of the Super Bowl. Conspiracy theories with the colors of the Super Bowl logo start now, right? Because these two teams are the number one team in the NFC and AFC. But the Ravens, I think they can go to the Super Bowl with the current roster they have if the roster stays healthy. And but again, I do think my issues with the 49ers and the Ravens both going to the Super Bowl is we haven't seen these teams perform well in the playoffs. Last year, again, Purdy got knocked out, but that same San Francisco defense got annihilated, right? They got cut up. Deebo Samuel fumbled in that game. Like, people act like if Purdy was in that game would have been a much different, and it probably would have. But again, you're still giving up 30 points to a great offense, but you think you're going to go against the Chiefs with that great offense and not also get lit up? Like, again, that was much more of a defense underperforming in the playoffs than what happened to Purdy. But that would be my concern with the Ravens also, because we haven't seen Lamar Jackson in the playoffs really do anything. So to say these two teams are just going to go straight through the playoffs to the Super Bowl, like, I need to see how Purdy plays in the playoffs, and I need to see how Lamar Jackson plays in the playoffs, because the 2 times we've seen them in the playoffs, right? I always remember that Chargers game where Lamar just had one of the worst games of his career. I think it was, I don't remember if it was his rookie year or the year after, but he's never really done anything in the playoffs. Purdy, he gets in one playoff game, and it wasn't like he did it, but he just gets knocked out of that game. So we just have no blueprint for him in the playoffs. I'm not saying he's going to crumble, because we haven't seen him crumble in situations where people said he would crumble, unless it was a concussion. But still, Niners and Ravens, I'm concerned about the playoffs. If you're a fan of those teams, like, how well do we do it in the playoffs? If you're the Ravens, it's injuries. If 49ers, it's we've kind of not been the same team in the playoffs since we lost to the Chiefs, right? And even in that Chiefs game, you give up a 10-point lead to lose. So again, as an Eagles fan, I hate the 49ers, but I can sympathize with having a 10-point lead against Mahomes and then having your heart ripped out, right? Because same thing happened to the Eagles. But Niners are my number one team. They look like the best team in the league. Even as a 49ers hater, because I'm obviously the Eagles, I still have to be unbiased doing a sports podcast. This isn't an Eagles podcast. It's a sports podcast. And I can't just sit here and try to nitpick, the 49ers, because every flaw they have has been addressed and fixed, right? They were on a 3-game losing streak and they came back better than ever. And it was just like, oh yeah, they were probably on a 3-game losing streak because their quarterback had a concussion in every game he lost. So it's not even like he just lost, with Hurts, we can say on Monday night he had the flu, which I think I think they maybe underplayed how sick he was because in the after game press conference, he did not sound good at all. And I think he was much more sick than they were letting on. But again, if you're that sick, don't play the fucking game. Like for the 49ers, if Purdy has a concussion, don't put him out there. Like we heard all offseason how great Sam Darnold looks in this offense. Like, prove it. Let your star quarterback have a night off if he has a concussion or if he has the flu. I don't know. But again, Eagles fan bias coming out right there. But again, at this point, I hate the 49ers. I hate this iteration of the 49ers, but I can't hate Christian McCaffrey. I can't hate Purdy. I think Deebo Samuel's an ass. I think I like Fred Warner. I think Fred Warner is one of my favorite players to watch in the league. And then it's just, yeah, I would like to see Purdy win a Super Bowl. I'd like to see Christian McCaffrey win a Super Bowl, but the person I'm rooting for, obviously, if my team's out of it, which I think they are, I don't think they have a shot this season of winning the Super Bowl. The team I want to see in the Super Bowl, I would love to see Ravens and Lions because I would love for Lamar Jackson to get a Super Bowl. He's always been one of my favorite players since he came into the league. And, he did that thing where he gets drafted bottom of the first round. He comes out on stage all mad and does the interview where he's like, everybody's going to regret not taking me. And then he wins he wins MVP. And then if he won a Super Bowl, I think that would be the cherry on top. And then obviously the Lions, for every reason imaginable, it would be cool to see the Lions win a Super Bowl. But those are my 5 teams who I think right now are the only 5 teams that can win a Super Bowl. It's Dolphins, it's Chiefs, it's Ravens, it's Niners, it's Lions. I'll get Casino's thoughts on that on Friday's episode. I was going to go through the games today, but I think we kind of went through, all the teams that mattered. I don't think there was a game I didn't touch on that I wanted to touch on. Maybe Browns Bears. I mean, that was a fun game to watch. I really thought the Bears are going to pull it out, but Joe Flacco, that was a great game. Also, the Bengals, all of a sudden, one of the best touchdown catches you're ever going to see with, I believe it's T. Higgins, where he does the back. Maybe it was Jamar Chase. I think it was T. Higgins, where he catches it and does like the spinning thing where it goes over the pylon for a touchdown. Great. Lions roll, as I said earlier. Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay has completely taken over the reins of this Bucs team, and now they look like they're just going to be a playoff team again that I would fear to play in the playoffs with how well they're playing right now. Saints against the Giants. I don't know what I was thinking picking the Giants. Texans get an impressive win without CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud, I believe the reports are he's also going to miss this next game. So I'm assuming everybody thought, myself included, the Texans would lose games. He wasn't in it, but winning this one, if they lose the next one, I still think they'll be fine. They might even make the playoffs. Yeah, Chiefs win. 49ers blow out the Cardinals. Again, the Rams, I just think are one of my favorite teams to watch. I just really like what they are with Stafford this season. They just look, and Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, and I just think the Rams are a fun team to watch that I would fear to play in the playoffs more than I would fear Tampa Bay. Then we talked about the 3 games, the Buffalo Bills blowing out the Cowboys, the Ravens blowing out the Jaguars, and the Seahawks ripping the heart out of myself, Philadelphia, probably the Eagles season with Drew Lock. I mean, come on. You lose to Drew Lock. I mean, props to him, but it was also DK Metcalf making like 3 of the most insane catches you're ever going to see on that game-winning drive. Yeah. I'm glad we didn't record yesterday because I was still angry, and today it's kind of just somber acceptance, right? Like I put him as a fraud. Eagles season's over. I think Cowboys season's over. I think Bills, I don't know. I'm still up in the air on the Bills and then the 5 teams I mentioned. So we'll be back, hopefully with Casino on Friday to do our picks for week 16, which is Christmas week. A lot of good games this upcoming week. A lot of seasons on the line, Eagles included. So yeah, we'll talk about all those picks, maybe some other sports stuff if anything interesting happens in basketball or hockey or whatever. So, yeah, this has been the Only Sports Podcast. I'm Will. That's usually where Casino is, but we're going solo today. So, we'll see you Friday. This has been the Only Sports Podcast. Adios.